Hey, book besties. Welcome to More Than a Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Leyna.
And I'm your other host, LJ. And today is such a cool day. Why is that, Leyna?
We have a special guest. We have Anna Nordberg, who just recently published her debut novel, When She Was Ours. It came out on August 1st. So welcome, Anna.
It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
And I will say, I read this book and I had texted LJ and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't put this book down. And the way you wrote it, it was so exciting because I would get to the end of one chapter and there's that mini cliffhanger and I'm like, I have to know what's going on next. So then you keep reading. So it totally sucked me in. I stayed up way too late reading it.
Yes. Well, and I'm a teacher, and this week was our first week back for professional development and stuff. And I hadn't started it. And so I finally started it. And then every night I was sleeping. So last night I actually got to read the last 50% in one setting, which I really think if I had not been tired earlier in the week, I might have read the whole thing in one sitting because that is how good it is. And I can do that when I'm not exhausted. But it is so, so good. And I just want to read part of a text that Leyna sent me because I told her just finished and I absolutely loved it. And she goes, it's so good. I'm always excited when we get to interview someone who is about to blow up. And that is 100% what we feel about this book.
Oh my goodness. I mean, let your words be heard by the, Goodreads community. But I think that might be a little bit of an oversell, but it just means so much to me that this book connected with two readers and clearly the kind of readers I wrote it for. And that means so much. So thank you. I will say you put a book out in the world and hearing that someone stayed up late to finish it is your dream. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you gave us a copy, but I'm totally buying a copy because that's how much I loved it. And I want to support you because we've read many debut authors, Leyna especially, because she gets a lot of arcs. They approve her more than they approve me. I think they know. They're like, she's not going to read it fast enough. But it just was so I was like, this might be my favorite book I've read this year. I just loved it when a book does that to you. And it's like being a debut. I mean, not to say that you just don't know when you read a debut. And I was just like, wow. And I was like reading all the information at the end. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a debut? I'm like, what other books? I need to go read them. So I was surprised. I was very surprised that it was a debut. So, and maybe I should pay attention to the information that Leyna gives me too. I'm a little scatterbrained.
You're educating young minds. That is a big job. And
yes, it is.
Thank you so much for lifting up reading in your limited free time. So
that's my favorite activities.
So I guess I'll put you on the spot. What's your elevator pitch for When She Was Ours?
So When She Was Ours is a story about a strong family under pressure. And so this is the Erickson family. They're on the eve of the older daughter Phoebe's wedding. And the mother Thea is both joyful that her daughter's getting married and battling a terminal cancer diagnosis. And at the wedding, there is a catastrophe that becomes a hinge in several different lives. And what I wanted to look at in this book, I wanted to look at how does loss unfold in a life? How do we love someone after they're gone? And how do families reckon with the past? That's probably that was a long elevator ride. I should probably learn to take that elevator pitch a little, but the heart of this is, a strong family facing a challenge and how that unfolds and affects different members of this sort of clan. And I really wanted to write about a strong family. There's a lot of amazing literature and TV about dysfunctional families, about brittle families, about anti-heroes, and it's all amazing. But I actually find happy families, strong families interesting.
I think that's one of the things I also loved most about it because I think obviously no family is perfect, but the way books write, everyone's family is this crazy dysfunctional family. And that's not the case. And it might make for good entertainment, but I think for those of us that do have a lot of strong elements in our family and strong relationships and close relations, even extended, like I am so close to my cousins. So having Allie in there and having all the stuff that went there, I think that made it extra relatable to me to kind of get this picture of what might happen, how it might look, depending on whichever person you're putting yourself in there and getting the perspectives of everyone. So I agree. I think that made it so relatable for me anyway.
Whenever I read books, my husband and I have been married for 24 years, and there's always like a dysfunctional marriage. And so it's very nice to see a marriage that is happy. And that was one of the things with Thea and her husband, was that they seemed to be a happy couple. They complemented each other, even though there was a little bit of strife there, as they're kind of like you said, they're reckoning with Thea's imminent death because she does have a terminal diagnosis. So they're struggling with that, but they're still there for each other, which I absolutely loved.
I so appreciate hearing this. And I did want Tom and Thea to have a strong marriage, a good marriage. They have different coping styles. That makes sense. And they're put under a lot of pressure with sort of how to cope with her illness, which I think reflects reality for a family. But I do think there's a lot of interesting storytelling you can do, not just going for the big fight or the dramatic moment or the betrayal, but the sort of small ways that people who have loved each other a long time, lived with each other a long time, and yet are in this uncharted territory, and how do they cope with it? And that's also why I wanted to tell the story from multiple points of view. And obviously Thea, the mother, and her younger daughter, Astra, are the sort of biggest point of view characters, but we see Phoebe, we see Tom, we see our family friend Nick, because I do think there is sort of one set of facts and chronology, but there are many different truths in a family and how something is experienced, and especially the wedding. I mean, any of us who have gone through a
Yes.
family
Yeah.
wedding know that it is experienced many different ways by different people. And I also am part of a big family with a lot of cousins. And so I wanted to show that as well. So I love that that resonated with
Uh-huh.
you.
Mm-hmm.
So this book starts out in 1995. What made you kind of bring it back to the past rather than setting it current day?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. The 90s were my own coming of age decade, but I was ready to write a contemporary novel. When I started writing, what I realized is I cannot tell a story about a young person going through a loss, going through grief with an iPhone and social media. I don't know how to tell that story. I simply don't. I mean, I could tell a story about a woman in her 40s dealing with that while texting about carpool and her son applying to high school or whatever. Obviously, I'm drawing on fiction here. But I mean, I could not authentically do that with someone who was a young adult. Astra's in college when the novel opens. And I also think I loved writing a plot in the 90s. This plot, as you both know, would not be possible if this was a contemporary set in
Yes.
our current time. Just, one text message and like several important events would
Yes.
not have happened. So
Yes.
I enjoyed that. It gave me more freedom. And look, I love how amazing authors like Sally Rooney, use texting and email. I think that's been very interesting in fiction, but I felt like it gave me a lot more freedom and a lot more cliffhangers. Again, it's
Yes.
harder to create a cliffhanger with an iPhone, and even even like TV shows where the person just shows up at someone's apartment and, they have this dramatic scene. I'm like, that it doesn't happen anymore. You don't just show up at someone's house. You text, you email. Like, it's just not a thing. I guess the young kids, they do the Snapchat. I mean, which I can't
Yes.
wait for that to enter my household. But I couldn't have told the story I wanted to tell if it was set now.
I 100% agree. I loved it, and I was coming of age in the 90s too, and so was LJ. So I connected with that because I was like, man, this is a
Yes.
time before cell phones, before you could just, and we were talking before we got on about social media. How much of this would have changed if people just Googled Astra?
Yeah.
It would have been different. So how did you get into novel writing in the first place?
Well, I would say there's a sort of wide bookends here. I wrote a lot, as a kid, read everything. My mother was a huge reader. So was my dad. They read aloud to my brother and me a lot. And my mother was also a writer. She was in magazines and academic publications, but that was sort of my model growing up. And I, would write lots of fiction on yellow legal pads, which I still have. I unearthed them.
Love that.
And, a lot of sort of Lion, Witch in the Wardrobe knockoffs. And, my dad read us the entire Lord of the Rings series. So, not really original works, but I loved to write as a kid. I took 2 amazing fiction courses in college and wrote a lot of fiction in college. And then I went into journalism, and there was basically a 20-year period where I didn't write fiction. But I did, I burned to write a book, and I know this was, this was my mother's dream as well. And I lost my mom when I was 17, and that was sort of one of the engines of this book. And I actually wrote a memoir before COVID about becoming a mother without my mom.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I went back after my children were born and opened all these boxes of her journals, papers, file, letters that I carried with me. I carried with me from New York City to San Francisco when my husband and I moved there, but I never opened them since after her death. My brother and I, when we were sort of 18 and 21, started going through them when we were kind of trying to organize and clean out her stuff, and realized we can't encounter her adult thoughts at this age. It was too hard and painful. And so we just put them away, and I reopened them. And so it was this sort of experience of encountering her, not just as my parent, but as an adult, and with her own, she wrote honestly when she was sick about her fears, and her fears about, leaving me and my brother behind. It was anguishing, but it was also amazing to have her voice back with me when I was becoming a mother. So this is a long way of saying that I wrote a memoir and it never found a home. It didn't get published. We put it out for submission before COVID, and then kind of into COVID. And, I can understand it was sort of a quiet book. I don't think I was sort of the voice people wanted to hear from right then. And I get that. But I built this book, this fictional novel, on the emotional architecture of that book. And I loved when you were saying, I get to the end of the chapter and I'd want to keep going. And that's the lesson I took from the memoir. That feedback I got was, this is beautiful writing. It's really moving, but it's too small. It's too quiet. And so I thought, okay, I got the memo. I understand the assignment. Let me wrap this story of loss in a plot that has mystery, that has sort of mini cliffhangers, that has a couple of twists. And I really appreciated the chance to, as hard as it was to have that book not sell, to sort of build this book on the shoulders of that manuscript meant a lot. So, why fiction? It's always sort of been in the back burner for me. And my journalism career also, even though journalism is obviously different than fiction, it's still storytelling, it's structure, it's pace, it's deadlines. And that, I think, served me well when I pivoted to fiction.
I think that, so you said you wrote the memoir. I wonder if you had to write the memoir to get your own emotions
Mhm.
out before you were fully prepared to be able to fictionalize some of this and be able to. I
Mhm.
I imagine you have to come to terms
Mhm.
emotionally with your mother's death before you could write this book. And I think it's beautiful how you kept some of the emotion in there. And I think it makes it
Mhm.
more real, but also this wonderful story about how life continues after death. I hope that's not a spoiler.
No, it's on the
Okay,
book jacket that, Thea
perfect.
dies, the mother dies. That is clear from the first chapter. 100% you are correct. There's no way this book would exist without that manuscript. And I really did a lot of work to feel like, yes, this failed to do what I set out to do, which was publish, and yet it still served an important purpose. I did have to tell that story, and it was cathartic. A theme in the book is both Astra and Phoebe in different ways feel, a bit broken. There's something that I internalized my mother's death in a way that is going to have a cost at some point. Phoebe struggles a little at first with getting pregnant and worries it's because of that. For Astra, it's sort of a different emotional toll. In writing the memoir, was also really facing my own fear as a mother that something would happen to me. I think that's real for all parents. I think it's very for parents who lost a parent when they were young, and so I feel like yes, there's no way I could have gone in cold and written this manuscript. And I also, while it is a debut, it wasn't my first book.
Yeah.
And I think you can sort of tell that in the pages, and that I kind of took what I learned from that first experience and I think learned from it.
Also piggybacking on all that, like, with the memoir and everything, and you going through your mom's notes, I think that made it where it was so believable, the mom perspective of being sick and all of the emotions with that. I agree that if you hadn't written the memoir and hadn't done all of that work, that 'cause that allowed you to understand as best you could from the other perspective, and I bet that was so hard to go through too, because you are a mom and thinking about putting yourself, because that is the thing. Once you become a mom, all of a sudden you put yourself in the mom characters, but then also, like, I haven't lost my mom or my dad, so I still identify with the daughters because that is a very real thing. No matter how it happens, usually the parents go first. And so it did make it easier to step into that role. But then also as a mom being like, oh my gosh, like how would I feel? How would I handle all this? And I just think it was so beautifully done.
Thank you. I do think when I started it, I thought I'd relate most to Astra, who is sort of the protagonist of the novel, and her family. Her family as a unit is sort of the protagonist. And yet I was like, "Oh, wow, the mother's point of view chapters are the ones that come to me the most easily." It's sort of that moment.
Hmm.
I remember during COVID going back and watching My So-Called Life, some episodes from that. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm relating to Patty, not Angela anymore." Like, yes. And for people who may not have seen that iconic MTV '90s series,
Yes.
and the daughter of Claire Danes' breakout role,
Hmm.
uh, but the parents were a big part of that show as well. So
Hmm.
I do think while Thea, is not my mom, it is fiction, there are significant differences. Her voice, a lot of her phrases,
Hmm.
her cadence, her competence and kind of unflappability, I really drew from my mom. And I do think having, read all these journals, letters, it gives you a sense of voice that then I was able to draw on. And I think it was actually much more successful trying to draw on that voice as a fictional character
Hmm.
versus me trying to sort of take her words and wrap my words around in a memoir, which is a little more fraught. And so again, I think fiction turned out to be almost the more appropriate
Mhm.
vehicle for this experience of going back and being with my mom's words and voice again.
Mhm.
So one part that I really loved was the family, they know that the mom has a terminal diagnosis, and they're so focused on her death. The day of the wedding, Astra goes for a run and encounters a bear. She can't see it, but she knows it's there. And I was like, man, I know this is, Astra, coming out, and she's like, oh my gosh, I was, almost attacked by a bear. But it made me really feel like, okay, sometimes you think about, especially if you know someone is in their terminal stages, you're focused on
Mhm.
that. But at any moment, a bear could come out of the woods and attack you,
Right.
or and the bear comes up later on in the book too. And I was like, yes.
You two are amazing readers. This is like my dream to talk to readers like you. Yes, like at any moment, a bear can come out of the woods. And I wanted to show that Astra, she's so internally focused. She's so focused on, her anticipatory grief, her sadness over her mom, her own confusing feelings. And then it's like, oh my God, that is a bear, and I'm actually in physical danger, which
Mhm.
is a different experience. So much of our lives are lived so internally that I sort of wanted to show that contrast. And obviously, yes, is there symbolism to the bear? When's the bear returning? That sense of kind of, I have to really shift gears now. I feel like you said it better than I did about my own, book.
Yeah.
That is what I was sort of trying to achieve in that scene. And even as she's really scared, she's almost having this other analysis of like, wow, this is so interesting. Like having just primal physical fear versus all of these complex stew of emotion.
No, I agree. One of the things that I really appreciated that you did that I do feel can be relatable to anyone that's maybe watched someone be sick, whether it's a parent or not. I'm not going to say how this comes about or anything, but when we get to hear all of Astra's feelings about the end of her mom's life and like all the complex emotions that I think, whereas like I haven't lost my mom, I've had relatives that have passed away from various cancers, and I can understand to some degree some of the controversial feelings that she has, because it is very honest and very real, and it makes sense. And I know this is such a to most people this will be a trivial thing. I have my dog is almost 15. She in the last few months has started going downhill. Like she's old. That's an old dog. And like watching her and just dealing with the things of her aging, like, you know, she hasn't been for a while good at waiting to go outside. And so there is a part of me, there's most of me is like, oh my gosh, don't let anything, don't want her to die anytime soon. But then there's a part of me that can recognize part of my life will be like trivial things will be easier, not and so anyway, and then there's also the fear of, am I going to have to make a decision for her? And so I think all the conversations around that with the family and internal thoughts and whatnot, I think that was so relatable and so well written. Like it was like I could get in there and feel that with her. I think the way you wrote the emotions from everyone's perspective, I feel like I could identify with every single character except the certain one.
Sure. There's one, most people I consider redeemable, but there's one who might, just be too far gone.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you for saying that. And I'm holding, your dog in my heart. I know how
you.
hard that is. And I think what I really wanted to be completely emotionally honest about was that, of course, we all know feelings of loss, anguish, sadness, missing someone, bereavement. We don't talk about, oh, maybe there's this tiny kernel of relief that someone who's suffering and that we love is now gone. And, my mom, first got sick when I was 13, died when I was 17. That was my sort of adolescence. And
Mhm.
adolescence, you're a teenager and you want to live in the present
Mhm.
and you want to be normal. Most of all, you want to be normal. And so this sense that I wasn't normal, that I had this thing happening and I knew, people cared about me and people felt really badly for me, but you just want to be normal.
Mhm.
And then at the very end of my mom's life, being so distressed by her suffering that, yes, there's this tiny piece of you that thinks, it would it be better if this ended because this suffering is unbearable.
Mhm.
I have an amazing dad and brother. I had a wonderful extended family. I had many adults there for me. And there was just no one who could tell me at 17 that these feelings were normal, that they didn't sort of make me a bad person. I didn't know what to do with them. I tried to just sort of crush them, and that only makes them stronger.
Mhm.
And so I really wanted to be completely honest about that, sort of not kind of pull
Mhm.
those punches. And also, we tend to focus on emotionally how hard it is to lose someone, but the physicalness of it is hard too. I think especially when you're young and you see your parent deteriorate physically so much. My mom was
Mhm.
always very active, very healthy. She had a glamorous appearance. You can worry, maybe it seems superficial, but as a child, like this is your caregiver. And as a teenager, this is supposed to be your person who you're pretending you don't need, but occasionally
Mhm.
you need to swim to the side of the pool and hang on to them. And physically, her deterioration for me was as painful as, sort of the emotional toll of worrying about losing her.
Mhm.
And that also felt uncomfortable and like I should not talk about that. My brother and my dad were much better at just caring for her and sort of not seeing the physical diminishment.
Mhm.
I was her daughter. I do think mother, daughter, father, son, there can be something just a little more charged about that. And I remember the first day she wore her wig,
Mm.
and my father and my brother didn't notice because she said, "What do you think is different about me?" And they had no idea. And she looked at me and she said, "Anna knows what it is." And it was this moment of just, she sees me, she knows I see her.
Mhm.
And yet there was part of me that wished I was just oblivious to the changes too. But I actually, I hope, I don't know, but I hope it actually gave my mother some peace to know that even if I didn't know what to do with all the feelings, I saw her and I wasn't sort
Mhm.
of pretending everything was okay.
Mhm.
I too experienced her sort of physical
Mhm.
decline.
Mhm.
I relate to
Yeah.
that. My mom has had some health issues, and just seeing the physicality of her being the person that would run 5 miles and now has to use a cane. And we were talking about for my son's graduation gift, she always told him he could go anywhere in the world and she would take him. And now that's more limited, and I'm going with them instead of it just being a grandma grandson adventure. I have to be there as another adult in case something happens. So it's very relatable to see that physical decline. And even though I think my mom hopefully has lots of years left, it's definitely, she's a different person than what she was at the beginning. And I think you described that well with Thea being kind of winded from going for short walks, and her daughter
Mhm.
Astra being concerned and overly protective of her. And I'm like, I have felt that way as well, because I'm like, are you okay? Let me And my mom's like, okay, I can do this. But it's that feeling of not knowing what to do and wanting to be overprotective and wanting your mom to be okay and to stay with you as long as possible. So
Yes.
very relatable.
Well, I'm really sorry you're going through that. And also, like, we are all in our 40s, and it's still incredibly hard to see, your parent be physically diminished. I think
Yeah.
that's the part of us that's the child that we never is always there. And so I hope that can be relatable even to people who are adults in a caregiving role for their parents, which is obviously so many adults now.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Okay, not to completely switch gears, but most writers are also readers. So what genres do you like to read?
So I read mostly sort of literary fiction and kind of literary commercial fiction. I just, if I have a chance to read a book, it's not going to be nonfiction unless it's sort of into thin air or something. I really do. I love my novels. I find my mental health is better if I'm reading a novel versus
Same.
obviously the news or nonfiction.
Although I'm really bad, I love true crime too. So I don't know. I'm like a
Ladies love true crime. That's just
it's true.
and that
can't help it.
Amazing true crime out there, and so great. Like we all, but that's an escape of a different kind. I think
That is an escape of a different kind. So what are some of your favorite books?
Yeah, so some of my favorites are, all of Jane Austen, but Persuasion, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility in particular are books I will reread over and over and over again. I think she was just an incredible observer of the human condition. And even though she's sort of so much, obviously, a hero of kind of romance, as she should be, she invented the marriage plot. There's so much happening in those novels, the sort of perceptiveness. And she was writing before the Victorian era. Her heroines actually have more independence and freedom than Victorian era heroines do. It was an interesting, in England, sort of rights and independence for women kind of went backwards a bit, interestingly. So Jane Austen, I love. Persuasion, I think her late season novel.
Good.
The only one not about just first love, but sort of older season love after you've given up hope. There's a combination of hope and loss in that book that just I love. Little Women, a favorite. I think I sort of drew on some Marmee vibes for inspiration in this book. I love Little Women. I love David Copperfield's Portrait of a Lady, the Middlemarch. I like this sort of big, like, we're going to do this. We're going to really tell a story. And then there's so much amazing contemporary fiction right now. I'm reading Flashlight by Susan Choi, which is mesmerizing.
I
she's
love
such
that
an
book.
incredible writer. It's also like, I think one of my strengths as a writer is being able to read books and be like, oh, this is so much better than what I can do, and to find sort of inspiration and escape in that, and not just be like, oh, I can't bear it. She is just a master. I read before that Wild Dark Shore, which I love. This is what Charlotte McConnell. I should have this right in front of me, but it is, a family on an island near Antarctica taking care of a seed bank, which seems like such a crazy premise, and yet it's it's one of the most believable families to me that I've encountered in literature. I love Ian McEwan. Atonement is sort of a touchstone book for me. I love Virginia Woolf. I love Zadie Smith, and actually, gosh, this is where the coffee hasn't kicked in. It's not white tea. That's my favorite. On Beauty. Yes, that'll is one of my favorites. So, we could be here a long day. I would say, Ishiguro's Remains of the Day. Like, these are just, expressed so masterfully. I have Whistler is next on my list. The Dutch House is one of my favorites by Anne Patchett.
So good.
I mean, Elizabeth Strout, this summer is ridiculous. It's like, what do I
Yes, it
do?
is.
We've got Whistler, with Elizabeth Strout, the things we never say. The Lucy Barton novels are some of my favorites. So, you'll have to cut me off before we ramble on forever. I love novels. And I think also in writing this novel, I've also learned about more authors that aren't, the ones that everyone's talking about on Instagram or in every bookstore. The Burning Side by
Yes.
Sarah Damoff, and so that has been great too. I think I've kind of tried to push past just like what are the big books everyone's talking about, and that is a great book.
When we were talking about interviewing people before they blew up, we interviewed Sarah Damoff. And
oh my goodness, you did it! I mean,
yeah, that was one of the ones she was probably the most of the ones that she was referencing, because that was really cool that we interviewed her like right when the Bright Years came out, I think.
Yeah.
Was it right before or right after?
It was right after.
And so,
because she came to our local bookstore and
right
I was
after.
like,
and so
we need to talk to you. And then I anticipate
she's
this
amazing.
book blowing up just as much.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, well, thank you. I sort of, like Astra, I'll have a hard time letting that one in, but I deeply appreciate that. I just appreciate so much that how it resonated with you and how you read it in such a sort of thoughtful and close way. Like, obviously, anyone who wants to tell me they enjoyed the book means so much, but to, be able to go a little deeper is great, because these are all things I did think about a lot. It wasn't just sort of randomly jotting it down on the page. And so the fact that you picked up on them means a lot.
Well, and I anticipate too for you, as people read it, I bet maybe you already have heard from readers about like how touched they were, or because I think the way you talked about like being so transparent in the writing of this book from the different characters' perspectives, like I said, I could identify in different ways to all of them. And I bet there are a lot of people that have gone through what you've gone through that inspired writing this story, that they're going to be like, she gets it. And I feel like if you haven't already started hearing from people, I think you're going to be hearing from a lot of people that it hits so well.
Thank you. I have started hearing from some readers, and what really means the most is when a reader who had an early loss or sort of went through something like that, says, I really just thought that was just my own weird feeling, and seeing it expressed on the page that someone else felt it, that, that means a lot. Because I wanted to be very, and I hope it comes across this way, sort of generous with this book. There's not one correct feeling. There's not one way to love someone after they're gone. There's not one way to experience a loss. And even Astra and Nick have that sort of funny conversation where he's like, well, Americans are they're sort of offended when you die. Like, we're pretty bad here, and kind of trying to sort of and we've made progress. We've made progress since the 90s. I will say that. But it's not our favorite topic here. Yes, exactly.
That it's not. So are you currently working on another book? I know you just had this one published 7 days ago from when we're recording, but what's next for you?
I have started a second book and expected to be further along than I am. I think I didn't quite understand your novel coming out is sort of a big deal, and there's a lot of things you do around that to try to sort of turn over every stone and make it, reach as many possible readers as it can. So, my beloved nieces do my social media, and they have me on this like blistering sort of content schedule that I
love it
keep up with, but they are so great. And I love it because it is like, it's a full-on family affair.
Yes.
Which feels in keeping with this. But yes, so I thought I'd be writing a lot more than I am right now, I cannot wait to return to a pace where I am writing daily. And I think that will start happening in the fall and into next year. But I do have an idea for a second book. This one will be set in the present. A mom with younger kids, and a sort of unexpected thing happens, and her brother kind of comes and visits her and tries to help her navigate this. Because as you could probably tell from when she was ours, I'm very into sort of siblings. I think
Yes.
siblings are sort of a bit underrated in literature, and the sisters in Sense and Sensibility, Little Women,
Mhm.
like these are favorites of mine for a reason. I am a younger sibling, as you might imagine. I have, an amazing older brother, but not a sister. But I do, as I said, I have these cousins, and I have some
Mhm.
very close cousins. So I feel like I get that kind of sisterhood vibe from them. But I really wanted to show these siblings who were very close when they were young. Modern life sort of takes them in very different directions, but they
Mhm.
have to sort of reunite to kind of figure out this thing that's happened, and all those old kind of family dynamics come up. It's sort of like what if my brother and I had to go to like the police station together? What would that
Ooh.
look like? And I thought
Yeah.
it was pretty funny and sort of interesting, kind of. So anyway, that is what I am working on. And I also, interestingly, in the memoir, we're really this memoir was never published, but I am squeezing every last drop
Mhm.
out of it. I did also write a lot about my experience, as a mother with young kids, and how wonderful that was in actually really unexpected ways, because so much of the narrative is like it's just war, and like I get that, also very hard, but it's sort of was also this great way for me to feel like parts of my mom that were in me were now emerging as a
Mhm.
parent, and that was this sort of wonderful experience. And it's also very in the present, like young kids, they you are in the present in a way that we
Yes.
often aren't in other parts of our life. And so trying to capture some of that in fiction, and again, wanting to be as sort of as transparent and honest as possible. I think there's a lot of amazing literature that deals with parenthood, and then there's a lot that deals with a very caricatured version of parenthood, which I don't love. And so I sort of was like, well, I'll be interested to sort of translate that experience into fiction and kind of see what happens.
Well, I can't wait to read that one too. It's already
Very
on my
cool.
TBR.
Yes, I
It's
know.
going
I
to be
wrote it
great.
down. I'm like, okay.
That's right.
But I feel like that sentiment of the publishing week, like when your book launches, being insane, and the weeks leading up to it, that's a sentiment that so many writers have talked about, because it is absolutely, you want to get your audience there, but it's so incredibly hard.
Yes.
And you're like, okay, when does life go back to normal?
Yeah. Completely. And I think many people have written about this, but there used to actually be a sort of playbook for when a book came out. And that really has changed for all but the sort of biggest tentpole
Yes.
books. And so you're also every day you're waking up sort of frantic, but like, what am I actually supposed to be doing today? What is the sort of, should I, be on Goodreads, or should I be, doing a reel? Like, it's just, I found that part very challenging. And so I'm just throwing that out there. Any other authors are listening, to be like, I feel you on that. That is, yeah, it's been a journey.
That's good. I'm so glad that you came on and talked to us. It's
Oh,
been amazing.
You two are great. I love your energy. I love that you like do this in addition to many other things, clearly just because you love books and reading, and are lifting that up. So I just thank you. This was a delight for me as well. I just feel like we're just sitting across from each other with a cup of coffee. So it's been
Which
great.
we
here
are.
we go. We are.
Just through the computer.
We're all drinking our cups of coffee.
And my Diet Coke. And my
Yes.
Diet Coke, because I'm crazy. It's fine. So yeah.
But I hope that everyone listening goes out and gets When She Was Ours. It's already out, so you can go just pick it up.
Some exciting news for the Kindle Unlimited readers. It is on Kindle Unlimited right now. And even if you don't have Kindle Unlimited, the digital copy is not expensive. So if you're on a budget, there's your option. But if you are on Kindle Unlimited, this is what you do. Now I wish I had read it on Kindle Unlimited, because I totally could have, because you read it and then you return it and then you go buy it. So then she gets extra. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, do it that way. That's my pitch. That's what I like to do. And then buy all the versions of the copies of the book, because you're going to love it. I know you are. I'm about to be like, after this, text our friend and be like, you have to read this book now. Like, you have to read it.
Thank you both so much. This has just been a delight and felt so real. And as I said, you're the kind of readers I wrote this for. And so it is such a just treat to be able to talk with you about the book.
Same. It's been wonderful.
It has such a delight.
All right, friends, we'll go ahead and sign off now. But like I said, everybody go get this book, get it on Kindle Unlimited, read it there, and then go get your shelf copy, your treasure.
That's what I'm going to do.
LJ is a big fan of that. All right. Well, we'll see all of you next week. And then if you want to go pick up Anna's book, you can find it pretty much everywhere. You can also look at Anna's website, which we'll link in the show notes. And then her nieces apparently have been working on her social media. So go check her out on Instagram as well. So you can see Anna there and see all her niece's hard work.
Yes, exactly. All right. Well, I guess until next time, guys. Yes.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to More Than a Book Club podcast. We are recorded and produced in McKinney, Texas.
Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.